I spent 20 years apologizing to the same people. 20 years. And not one of those apologies changed a single thing. Not one of them made those people kinder or softer or more willing to meet me halfway. They just took the apology, tucked it away, and handed me a fresh reason to need another one. And I kept giving them, because I was raised to believe that a good woman keeps the peace, that a good woman smooths things over, that a good woman says sorry even when she is not sure what she is sorry for, just to make the air breathable again. I am 85 years old, and I am done being a good woman in that particular way. If nobody has ever told you this plainly, let me be the one to do it. Some people are never going to change, not because they cannot, because they have decided not to. And every apology you give them is not a step toward healing. It is a down payment on your own disappearance. I know that is hard to hear. I know because it was hard for me to hear it too, and I had to hear it from life itself over the course of decades before I finally believed it. So let me tell you what it cost me, and maybe you can learn it a little cheaper than I did. Her name was Patricia. We had been friends since we were both young mothers in the same neighborhood, pushing strollers down the same sidewalk, borrowing sugar from each other, laughing at the same small disasters of early parenthood. Patricia was charming and funny, and could make you feel, when she turned her full attention on you, like you were the most interesting person in any room. She could also make you feel, when she turned that attention away, like you had done something wrong and needed to figure out what it was and fix it immediately. And I spent the better part of 2 decades doing exactly that. Every falling out between us followed the same pattern. Patricia would say something cutting, or forget something important, or cancel plans at the last minute for the 4th time, or make a comment in front of other people that sat wrong in my chest for days afterward. And I would feel hurt. And then I would feel guilty for feeling hurt. And then I would convince myself that I was being too sensitive or too demanding or not understanding enough of what she was going through. And then I would call her, and I would apologize for being distant, for being difficult, for not being more patient, for whatever framing made the peace possible. And Patricia would accept the apology graciously, warmly even, and things would be good again for a while, until the next time. I cannot tell you the exact moment I understood the pattern. It was not one dramatic revelation. It was more like one morning I woke up tired in a particular way, not sleepy, tired of the cycle, tired of the weight of managing something that only ever felt temporary. And I thought, when was the last time Patricia apologized to me for anything? And I sat with that question for a long time, and the answer that came back was quiet and devastating and absolutely clarifying. Never. In 20-some years, through every falling out, through every repair, through every cycle of hurt and apology and temporary warmth, Patricia had never once said sorry first. Not once. I had been apologizing for two people the entire time. Now I want to ask you something right now, before we go any further. Is there someone in your life who fits this description? Someone you find yourself apologizing to repeatedly without being entirely sure what you did wrong? Someone whose approval you work for in a way that feels more like labor than love. Someone who accepts your softness and offers very little of their own. Take a moment and just let that person's face appear in your mind. Because I think you already know who I am talking about. I think you knew before you clicked on this video. And I think part of you has known for longer than you are comfortable admitting. And if you are sitting there nodding right now, if something in your chest is recognizing what I am describing, I want you to stay with me. Because what comes next is the part that actually matters and that nobody talks about, because it is complicated and uncomfortable. And it requires you to do something that every good, caring, empathetic person finds nearly impossible. It requires you to stop. Now, before I go any further, I want to say something to you directly. If this is landing somewhere real for you, if this is touching something you have been carrying quietly for a long time, then you are exactly the kind of person who needs to be here watching this. And I do not want you to miss what we talk about next, because we go deeper on this in other videos, and I do not want you to have to find your way back without the map. So right now, just go ahead and subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you get notified when we put something new out. Because if this video already feels like something you needed to hear, there is more where this came from. All right, back to Patricia. I stopped apologizing to Patricia when I was 63 years old. Not dramatically. No confrontation, no letter, no speech. I simply stopped calling to repair things. The next time I felt that familiar pull of guilt, telling me to reach out and smooth it over, I just sat with the feeling instead of acting on it. I let the silence be there. I let the discomfort of unresolved tension exist without immediately fixing it. And I waited to see what Patricia would do. She did nothing. A week went by, 2 weeks, a month. No call, no message, no checking in to see if I was all right. And that answer was the clearest, most honest thing Patricia had ever communicated to me in 20 years of friendship. When I stopped doing the work of keeping us together, we were not together. That was the foundation we had been standing on the whole time. Not mutual care, my labor. I will not pretend that did not hurt. It hurt enormously. Because I had loved Patricia, genuinely loved her. And losing someone you love, even when the losing is the right thing, even when everything inside you knows it is necessary, still feels like grief. And I let myself grieve it properly. But underneath the grief, when I finally got quiet enough to feel what was there, was something I had not felt in 2 decades. Space, a kind of lightness in my chest, where the constant low-level anxiety of managing that friendship had lived for so long that I had stopped noticing it as a weight. It had just become part of how I breathed. Here is what I need you to understand about the people who never change. They are not villains in most cases. Patricia was not a villain. She was a person who had learned very early that charm was currency, and that warmth strategically deployed could get you what you needed from people, without requiring you to do the harder work of genuine reciprocity. She was not evil. She was comfortable. And people who are comfortable in a dynamic have very little incentive to examine it. Why would they? It is working perfectly for them. The only person it is not working for is you. And you have been so busy apologizing for your own needs that you never made that obvious enough to matter. The lie that keeps you in these patterns is the lie that your apology contains power. That if you say sorry the right way, at the right time, with the right amount of genuine feeling, something will finally shift in the other person, and they will finally see you and finally meet you, and the relationship you have been trying to build will finally be possible. But that is not how it works with people who have decided not to change. Your apology does not reach them the way you intend it to. It does not land as an offering of connection. It lands as confirmation that the dynamic is working. It tells them that you will continue to absorb the discomfort, that the relationship can continue on its current terms, that they do not need to adjust anything because you will adjust everything. And I want you to think about that honestly, and I want you to drop a comment below telling me if this is something you have experienced yourself. Because I genuinely believe that most of the women I know, most of the women watching this right now, have had at least one relationship that followed this pattern. And most of us were never given the language to name it or the permission to step back from it. Tell me who you were thinking of when I described this. You do not have to name names. Just tell me what it felt like to recognize it. Because that comment section matters to me, and I read what you write there, and I want to know that this is landing somewhere real. I lost other things to this pattern beyond Patricia. There was a family member, a sister-in-law whose name I will keep to myself out of courtesy, who I spent 15 years walking on eggshells around. 15 years of carefully chosen words at holiday dinners, of asking my husband to mediate, of writing apology notes for things I was not certain required apology, of shrinking my own presence in rooms we both occupied so that she would have enough space to be comfortable. 15 years. And the accommodation never once produced warmth. It just established that accommodation was what I did, and so accommodation was what was expected. You know what finally changed things there? Not an apology. Stopping the apologies entirely. deciding that I was going to take up my appropriate amount of space in the room and use my natural volume of voice and stop pre-editing myself for her comfort. She did not like it at first. She was accustomed to the smaller version of me, and the full version felt like aggression because she had no context for it. But I was not aggressive. I was just present. Actually present, in a way I had not been for 15 years. And slowly, not immediately, but slowly, something shifted between us. Not into deep friendship, but into something honest. Something where we both existed equally in the same space, without one of us constantly managing the other's reaction. That is not nothing. That is actually quite a lot. Your peace is not something you owe anyone an explanation for. I need you to hear that sentence again and let it settle. Your peace is not something you owe anyone an explanation for. Not your mother-in-law, not your oldest friend, not the colleague who makes every interaction feel like a test you might be failing. Not anyone. The decision to stop absorbing someone's behavior and calling it your fault is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of honesty. The most honest thing you can do for a relationship that has been built on your endless accommodation is to stop accommodating and see what, if anything, is actually there. Some relationships survive that test, the ones where the other person has genuine care underneath the difficult behavior. They sometimes respond to the shift. They notice you have stopped shrinking, and they do their own quiet recalibration. Those relationships become real in a way they never were when you were managing them. Those are worth staying for. But the ones where the other person simply finds someone else to apologize to them, where your removal from the pattern produces nothing but your absence, those were never relationships in the true sense. They were arrangements, and you deserve more than an arrangement. I have 20 years back now in my imagination, 20 years of apologies I did not owe, and energy I will not recover, and mornings I spent dreading interactions that I had agreed to keep having. I cannot have those years back, but I have the years I have left, and I spend none of them apologizing for taking up space. None. And what I have found in the space where all that unnecessary sorry used to live is something I did not expect to find. I found my own voice again, clear and unedited and mine. And it turns out I have quite a lot to say. Now, before I leave you, I want to ask you one more time to do something. If this video gave you something real, if you heard something in here that you have been needing to hear, please share it with someone who needs it too. Because there is a woman somewhere in your life who has been apologizing to the wrong person for too long, and she does not know yet that she is allowed to stop. Send this to her. And subscribe to this channel and hit the bell, because we are going to keep having exactly these kinds of conversations. and I do not want you to miss a single one. You have spent enough time on people who were never going to give you what you deserved. Spend some of it here instead, with people who are actually listening. I am 85 years old. I have made every mistake I am warning you about, and I am telling you now what I could not tell myself at 40 or 50 or even 60. You are not too sensitive. You are not too demanding. You are not the problem you were taught to believe you were. You are just someone who kept apologizing to people who were counting on you to do exactly that. Stop counting yourself out. Start counting yourself in. That is all I have got, and it is enough.